It didn't start with shouting. It didn't start with bruises. It started the way all terrible marriages do, quietly. This is the story of the house that swallowed a marriage, a story of love that turned into a prison. When Elena met Marcus, everyone said the same thing: "You're so lucky." And on paper, he was perfect. Marcus was calm, soft-spoken, and responsible. He was the kind of man who held doors open for strangers and spoke gently to waiters. He never ever raised his voice. Elena, at the time, was coming out of a period of chaos, a string of failed relationships, unstable jobs, a family that never quite felt like home. To her, Marcus felt like safety. He was order in the middle of her storm. He listened to her, really listened, remembering the small, insignificant details she'd share. And he would say things that made her heart melt. Things like, "I just want to protect you." 6 months after they met, they were engaged. A year later, they were married. If you look at their wedding photos, you'll see two people beaming, bathed in sunlight, the picture of happiness. But what you can't see in those photos is that Elena had already begun shrinking. The person she was had started to become smaller, quieter, making room for the person he wanted her to be. The changes were so small at first, you could easily ignore them, explain them away. Marcus didn't like her wearing certain clothes. Not because he was controlling, he'd say, but because men stare, and he didn't want her to get the wrong kind of attention. He didn't forbid her from seeing her friends. He'd just casually point out how they don't really care about you, planting seeds of doubt about the people she loved. He never demanded to see her phone. He just said that married people shouldn't have secrets from each other, making it seem like a principle of trust rather than an act of surveillance. By the end of their first year of marriage, Elena found herself apologizing constantly for things she didn't even understand, for being too loud, for being too quiet, for having an opinion he didn't share. It was Marcus who suggested moving out of the city. His reasoning sounded so practical. "Less noise," he said. "Lower rent, more privacy for us." The house they bought sat at the very edge of a quiet town. It was old and narrow, surrounded by tall, thick trees that blocked out the sun by mid-afternoon, casting long, cool shadows. Inside, the walls were thick, and the rooms echoed in a strange, unsettling way. From the very first night, Elena felt a deep sense of discomfort there. Marcus, on the other hand, slept perfectly. Soon the rules appeared. They arrived slowly, one by one, disguised as routines for a stable life. Dinner must be on the table at exactly 7 o'clock p.m., lights out by 10:30. All doors must be locked at all times. Marcus insisted these routines created stability, a calm home. If Elena ever questioned him, even gently, he'd just smile, a patient, condescending smile. "You're overthinking again," he'd say softly. When his constant critiques made her cry, he'd sigh with a theatrical air of exhaustion. "I can't help you if you won't listen." His calmness was a weapon. It made her feel like she was the irrational one, the one who was crazy. The isolation became a wall around her. Elena stopped working after Marcus insisted her job was too stressful for her delicate nature. Her phone, which once buzzed with life, fell silent. The friends who tried to reach out eventually gave up, telling each other that she had changed. Her own sister said Marcus felt off, that something about him was unsettling. When Elena relayed this, Marcus simply said they were all jealous of the perfect life they had built together. The wall grew higher. When Elena suggested visiting her family for a weekend, Marcus didn't get angry. He didn't yell. He just became quiet. A heavy, suffocating silence filled the room, and she learned that his silence was so much worse than shouting. It was a punishment, a void that she would do anything to fill, even if it meant surrendering. Then things turned darker. The first time Marcus locked a door with her inside, he claimed it was an accident. The second time, he said it was for her own safety. By the third time, Elena realized with a cold knot of dread in her stomach that she didn't have a key. She was a guest in her own home. Marcus controlled everything. The money, the car, the daily schedule. He corrected the way she spoke, the tone of her voice. He corrected the way she laughed, telling her it was too loud, too unladylike. He even corrected the way she walked. "You embarrass yourself without even realizing it," he would tell her, his voice dripping with faux concern. Elena began to doubt her own mind. Her memory became fuzzy. Her thoughts felt like they weren't her own. She started to wonder if he was right. Maybe she was broken. Maybe she was the problem. He was chipping away at her reality, piece by piece. The night everything finally broke happened during an argument about nothing, about everything. Elena wanted to visit her sister, who was sick. Marcus said no. This time she insisted. And as she did, she saw his face change. It wasn't anger. It was a cold, profound disappointment. "You just don't appreciate how much I do for you," he said, his voice calm and level. Then he calmly took her phone. Then he took the house keys from her purse. Then he walked out of their bedroom and locked the door from the outside. Elena screamed until her throat was raw and burning. She pounded on the door until her fists were bruised. Through the thick wood, she could hear nothing. Marcus had gone to sleep. For years, Elena was a prisoner, but not in the way you see in movies. She wasn't locked in a basement. She wasn't chained to a wall. It was something far more sinister. She was managed. She was allowed to go out, but only under his strict supervision. She was allowed to speak, but only when her words were carefully chosen. She was allowed to exist, but only quietly, in the background of his life. Marcus documented everything. Her moods, her mistakes, her episodes, as he called them. He told the neighbors that she was emotionally unstable. He told doctors that she was fragile and needed his constant care. And he told her over and over that she was lucky he stayed, that no other man would put up with her. Years slipped by like ghosts. Elena aged rapidly. Her voice grew small and timid. When she looked in the mirror, she saw a stranger looking back. The worst moment, the true rock bottom, didn't come with a slap or a punch. It came with a moment of terrifying clarity. One night, as they sat in silence, Marcus said something casually, as if discussing the weather. "You know," he said, "if you ever left, no one would believe you." And in that instant, Elena realized the absolute, chilling truth. The marriage was never about love. It was about ownership. The house was never a home. It was a container designed to hold her. He had not only imprisoned her body, but had successfully convinced the world, and almost her, that she belonged there. So, how did it end? Elena escaped years later, not through some sudden burst of strength, but through a crack of opportunity. A contractor working on the neighbor's roof noticed the bruises on her arms she tried so hard to hide. A neighbor finally called the police after hearing screaming through the thick walls, screaming that sounded different this time. A single unlocked door, a moment of carelessness from her captor, changed everything. Marcus was arrested. At the trial, he cried on the stand. He said he was misunderstood. He told the jury that he only wanted control because he loved her so deeply, so completely. Elena, sitting in the courtroom, did not cry. She just sat silently, finally free, but permanently altered by the years she had lost. People always asked the same question. Why did she stay so long? They always do. But the truth is simple and terrifying. By the time the marriage had become a full-blown horror story, Elena no longer remembered who she was without it. The cage had become her world. The worst prisons aren't made of iron bars, but of promises. The worst marriages don't begin with violence. They begin with the promise of protection. And they end not with loud, dramatic screaming, but with someone slowly, quietly disappearing inside a house that remembers everything. If you or anyone you know is experiencing something like this, please know that you are not alone and there is help available. You can reach out to the National Domestic Violence Hotline. Their number is on the screen. It is confidential and available 24/7. Your story doesn't have to end this way. Thank you for listening.